We have engaged the Hugh.
We have engaged the Borg.
The Borg. Wouldn't Sean Connery have been amazing on Star Trek just in any capacity? It's
In
like
any capacity, indeed.
any capacity whatsoever,
Indeed.
right?
Just one, just one ping, Mr. Data. One ping.
Oh my god. Welcome back, audience, to another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal conversation about Star Trek. We're currently focused on Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 22, Soy Borg.
Yo soy Borg.
Yo soy Borg. That's the name of this episode. No, I'm just kidding. It's Iborg. But how cool would it? Oh,
we have engaged the Borg.
You got to move him over a little bit.
We have engaged the Borg. Oh my!
Is that Hugh? Is that Hugh?
Oh my! This is a generic Borg.
No, let's see him. Can you bring him up close? Can we get close?
It is not Hugh. It is not Hugh. This is a generic Borg.
Okay, but there's some items that are similar. Like some of the armor looks
because they are Borg.
Oh, look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Oops.
Oh no. The Borg.
Turn off. The Borg are calling me right now.
The collective. The Borg collective is calling. Oh no, the Borg collective.
I think that's going to be Arthur's Halloween costume next year. Is a Borg.
Did you dress up Arthur for Halloween this year?
No, he only wore his little Halloween bow tie. He has a bow tie with little fish skeletons on it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. That's cool. So that's what he wears at Halloween for the last 2 years. But I looked at, he's kind of a petite cat. He might be the runt of his litter, so he's not like a huge cat. So it's hard to find a costume that fits him. I had some contenders this year, but they just didn't work out. I think they were like going to be too big on him.
Right. No, I know it's hard.
Also, if you don't find the right costume and you make them wear it, they get angry. I've seen on videos of cats being like, I am not dressed up as a cat. So I have worn this hat before. And it is not a cat, it is a fox. I might be Star Fox. I never thought of this, but I'm Star Fox.
Oh, the old Nintendo game.
That was one of my favorite games ever. I played that for hours and hours and hours as a child. Star Fox.
What a great way to start off this episode.
The crew of the Enterprise encounter a distress signal as they're exploring a new uncharted solar system, and they decide to investigate, as they always do, and they find they send Beverly, Worf, and is it Beverly, Worf, and Riker go down. I just watched this and
engage the Borg.
So why the fuck do I have to talk to it? I already know it's going to kill me. Anyways, so they go down to. I've been dropping a lot of curse words lately on Starfleet Boy, and I want to just say that like we are PG-13, so I have to check myself before.
Oh, I'm sorry, I drop a lot of foul language on this.
No, it's okay. I think we're in line with PG-13, which is the goal for Starfleet Boy. But I just want to make sure, just because it's nighttime, I might curse.
Oh, okay.
This is Starfleet Boy After Dark.
Should I turn the lights down?
You did too. It's only nighttime because we fell back.
Right. Today is the first day of falling back in the time. Yeah.
That's just a little. Okay, going back to the summary. So Beverly, Riker, and Worf, and maybe Geordi all find Data's probably there. Maybe actually. Can't remember. So bad.
Did you watch the episode, sir?
I totally watched it, but I I just have the worst mind.
Or are you going from memory? As you said, you could do this from memory without watching
No, I
it.
did say that, but I did watch it. I do
Okay.
have to admit that at the beginning I was distracted because I was making coffee. So this is the part.
Oh, this is the coffee part.
The
Okay.
coffee part.
Go for it, man.
Anyways, they do discover that there's one survivor, and they have a whole debate in the moment about what to even do. Should we just leave him here? The Borg are going to come back. Like, there can't be any evidence that we were here. And then Beverly basically says, well, it's too late for that. I've already started treating him. And so Picard has to make a tough decision. So he decides to beam the Borg aboard despite his first instincts, and he detains it. What do they say, like a detainment field or something like that? Anyways, containment field. So anyways, Picard then comes to examine this fallen soldier Borg drone, and in the moment concocts, and I don't blame him if I hated the Borg as much as he does. In the moment, he concocts an idea, and he presents it right there in sickbay above this like injured, dying Borg, and says, "Well, if we're going to revive it and bring it back to health, could we also send it back with the equivalent of a virus that would disable the Borg and render them no longer a threat to the Federation and others?" And everyone's like, "Yes, let's do it," except for Beverly, who immediately protests from the beginning.
Right.
And you can
as usual.
Yeah, but you can understand her perspective. She's actually like right when she says later on, I think that she says something like, "Well, from my perspective, I'm healing an individual. I don't see the Borg." But I do think that like Beverly wasn't there at Wolf 359. She didn't experience the carnage that everyone else aboard the ship experienced. So we can kind of probably understand her perspective. Anyways, so that just kind of we just talked about another part of the plot there. But basically, they end up reviving the Borg and installing a power conduit so that it can sustain itself while they examine it and try to determine how to infiltrate its root systems and implant this virus into its system so that it can get it back to the Borg. Meanwhile, there's a time crunch because long-range sensors detect that there is in fact another scout ship on its way to investigate why the previous one went dark. So they have to figure this out pretty quickly. In the meantime, Dr. Crusher and Geordi start to do the and what is bound to happen, they become friends with the Borg and even give it a name because, well, we know that Geordi and Beverly are very friendly. So they give it the name Hugh, and Guinan's horrified by this. She's like, you could tell she like almost wants to like just like slap Geordi when he oh look, everyone's coming into this this summary. You got to say something. We got to see her.
Oh yeah. Oh no, Geordi, stop! No.
Wow, that's really good kabuki theater there, Doctor.
Thank you.
Anyway, she's horrified, and then she meets it, and then they have a conversation, and the Borg surprises her because the longer it's separated from the collective, the more it has to kind of make calculations and think for itself. So it's starting to like manifest a personality known as Hugh. Anyways, Guinan then goes to Picard and tries to convince him to see the Borg, and Picard is just outraged. It's a really good scene. I thought we'll have to discuss that one in depth. I don't know what you thought, Doctor. But finally she's like, well, if you're going to condemn, regardless of how you feel about the Borg, if you're going to condemn them to system failure, which is the same as which is tantamount to genocide, you may as well go and talk to it, or him. Everyone's calling him at this point. Anyways, so Picard agrees, and he does a strange thing. He beams Hugh into his ready room. I thought he would go down to the containment area, but he beams Hugh to his ready room, and then he asks Worf to leave the room. And then when Hugh recognizes him and calls him Locutus, Picard immediately jumps on this and decides to like see what's really at the root of all this, like because he thinks the Borg are capable of all manner of deception, right? So he's very suspicious, and he's just like pounding and like hammering Hugh, and we get the full Picard. and and then Hugh says something. He says I. He identifies himself as I, and this like totally throws Picard, and he suddenly stops speaking like Locutus and goes back to his normal self. And now he's like, everyone comes to their senses at the end, and kind of it's not like really, I think, to them they were just like, okay, well, obviously now we can't do this. So then they're like, okay, well, we're gonna put this Borg back, and hopefully hopefully a little bit of his individuality will infect the Borg, and it does in not so great ways. But we can't talk about that. We can't talk about that yet. Today we're only focused on Borg. How was my summary? Was it a good summary?
Borg.
Was that it? Borg.
We're like, hi, Borg.
Hi, Borg. Get to us.
Hi, Borg. Get to us. There we go. That was a very good summary. Thank you.
Was it a good summary, really?
It was a very good summary. Yes, it was.
I'm good.
Yes, it was.
Excellent. It was. Doctor, it's nice to have you back.
It's nice to be back.
Do you remember in like 95 or whatever it was, the year that
yeah, of course I remember
this episode came out, and how did you feel about it back then? And what's that?
Was it controversial?
It was controversial. I can't profess to remember anyone's like, I don't have the kind of mind where I can be like, oh, you said this or you said that. But I do remember that you guys thought I was ridiculous for liking this episode as much as I did. And now I realize why.
And what is the reason?
So in high school, I wasn't really out or any, like, there was no talk of my sexuality. Whenever anyone even asked me, like, did I like girls or guys, I would just say I'm asexual, right? I remember now watching this episode, I had the hugest crush on Hugh. I actually thought Hugh was attractive, and Jonathan Del Arco, the actor who plays him, is actually very attractive. You can't tell. I guess he's so attractive to me that I could tell underneath all the prosthetics. This is like one of those moments where your mom would be like, "Pero que feo!" Like, why would Sohail have a crush on a Borg? Look at how ugly that.
Wow.
But I do remember, so I think that was the reason for my my sort of deep how would you say, deep
love.
Oh, my cat. Where'd you go?
Wow.
Now you know something new about about me that you did not know before.
But it still doesn't explain.
Wow. I love this episode because I was in love with Hugh the Borg, and I had a total like hormone driven crush.
Wow.
Which should tell you something about me as an individual, that a cybernetic character.
Well, in your defense, they do try to teddy bearize. Is that a term?
The Borg, yes.
The Borg, as much as they can in this episode, which really leads me to,
He comes across as an adolescent in many ways, and one of the cues is the rounded edges on all of his equipment. Yeah. Like, he has like very round, like even his feet look like, the rest of the Borg look like they're wearing boots, if I recall, but his feet kind of seem like these little pads around. There was just something interesting about that, and there's no way to know if Hugh is even a human, or
they never try. They never actually say.
Yeah, they never. Well, because there's no way to know. Like, I think it's like hard to tell.
Genetically, yes, they could test.
Oh, that's
true.
There's human. That's true.
I mean, not human, but there's tissue. Okay.
Did I just throw you a curveball?
No. I mean, it opens up I guess the first door, which is Hugh himself. Also, the voice modulation is very different You know,
It's good.
Hugh, they tone down the harshness of Hugh. If you listen to the Borg in the other episodes that they're in, they're much more mechanical. Even Locutus.
Did you notice though that they do it throughout? They do it more. It's more pronounced at the end of the episode as
Oh
he
yeah,
has his own
absolutely.
individuality. So I did like that actually. I thought that was
By
cool.
the time he's in
Yeah.
Picard's ready room, he's positively, um, you know,
He has a personality. Like there's
yeah,
a
he's like a Disney
personality.
character at that point. I mean, he's like Bambi or Dumbo. I mean, he's
Oh
just
my god.
like, you know, I mean, no,
Is it like
seriously. I mean,
no,
it's
but he has a big like he has the big eye and it kind of has a sympathy in the design.
right. You
I
just
have to say
wanna, yeah,
I never noticed that before, but now that you pointed out, like that was probably pretty good on the part of the design team. Maybe it's not like the most maybe it's a little obvious over your head, hit you over the head, but I think A for effort, right? Right?
well, I mean,
Like
I will say this. I have very conflicted feelings about this episode. Obviously, my initial reaction way back when was much harsher, and it remains very critical today. I will say this: it is a very well acted episode. Obviously, Jordan, it's a Geordie Crusher episode, if you want to call it that. But it's very well balanced in that, you know, Geordie and Crusher have a lot to do and contribute to the episode.
everyone's in it. Troy even protests. Like there's two times that I recall there was a debate um about the state of Hugh and what they were gonna do and like things like that. And I thought it was interesting like who was always it was surprising who was it like all for like annihilating the Borg, and Troy seemed to be for it. You know, like Worf is definitely for it, Riker's for it, Troy's for it. It starts out as Beverly not being for it, and then it moves to Geordi, and then Guinan, and then of course Picard is faced with like this decision at the end. But yeah, I just thought I thought about the acting in this episode. It was actually quite superb. What is the template for you that this is trying to kind of shed light on? Like, what is this episode? What real life thing does this episode address? Is it individuality? Like that whole idea that like it's easier to destroy an enemy when they're faceless and unknown to you. You know, like the whole concept of the other. Is that where this episode ultimately is presenting? You know, its themes.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Also, I think, you know, I don't think I picked up on it when I originally watched it as a kid, but I do now. Is the fact that Hugh is portrayed something like an adolescent, which I think I completely missed until this rewatching.
Oh, right on.
And so then, you know, it kind of now you think of it in context of, well, you know, look at you know, in other parts of the world where people strap bombs on kids,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly isn't
And we
isn't
know
that what Picard is doing? In essence, he's
essence, yeah.
strapping a bomb on a kid and he's sending them into you know, the Borg town square to set something off. Which, yeah, go ahead.
That's deep. I never thought about that
Well,
until you just mentioned it. But the idea that he was an adolescent, I think I did pick up on that. Obviously, since I was probably examining the looks of the Borg really deeply. Now that you know, I had a crush on on the character. but but it also recalled and kind of like advanced our knowledge of the Borg in a sense, because in the previous episodes we've seen that they do not only do the Borg assimilate, but they also uh, have like a reproductive factory in which there were babies being incubated, and
right.
those particular Borg, like you can imagine, Borg are processed in all kinds of way. There's like, oh, we've assimilated this planet and we'll add their distinctiveness to us, and then there's the longer term, like, oh, we're gonna like have to keep these genetic, you know, these bio portions active, so let's produce Borg babies. So
Borg babies.
Jonathan Del Arco's character Hugh is one of those, I believe, Borg babies. It was born a Borg. It was not like assimilated in this traditional sense of like as an adolescent. It could have been. We don't have enough information to say it,
Well,
but
no,
I'm just saying.
I think you're right, because if and now I'm going into Voyager territory, which I'm shaky on. I'm not very strong on
Right,
Voyager,
right. Same
but
here.
I do believe that, you know, Seven of Nine was assimilated. You know, she was already, you know, a child or whatever, and then was assimilated, but she has memories prior to being assimilated.
And Hugh doesn't have
Hugh doesn't
that
seem to have any memories other than
of
just
not
being in the
being
Borg
on board.
collective. So I
Yeah.
think you are correct in assessing that he is one of those babies that they pulled the drawers and there are these Borg purple babies in there. I mean, he's one of those for sure. So you're right. I think you're absolutely right.
And I think that's an interesting thing. It's just like there's a lot. I thought when obviously I had some other reasons to like really enjoy this episode, but now on this rewatch I noticed a lot of things like that. I also thought it was interesting, the like kind of dynamic of how his humanity was being humanity as racist. His individuality, as they say in the episode,
Right.
is it comes through. And I think that my favorite scene is the scene where Guinan goes to meet him, because her surprise to me was the most like I really love the scene where Picard confronts him, because we get the full Picard. But to me, that like kind of, I remember being very impactful to me as a young person, because I didn't have a frame of reference per se to understand that. Like we didn't grow up with the threat of the Borg, you know,
Uh-huh.
but we do grow up, all of us, no matter where we live on planet Earth, with kind of like this deep rooted fear that the other, or they are coming, like whoever they are, like the enemy, as Picard refers to it in this episode. So you can always relate to that. And one can't help but think like, well, I'm someone's enemy too. Like I'm as an American, we're viewed as an enemy to perhaps some other group, either, or a frenemy maybe. Even we're hoping we're just frenemies, but that's the way it is. And so like I can't help but wonder like where's the common ground. And I think that this episode like kind of makes you think about those things, and there's no answer. I have no answer for it.
Well, I guess it's
It's
timely
like
that we're rewatching this, with the caravan, this infamous caravan that's coming to us, that Trump is making such a huge deal out of, and saying they're full of murderers and rapists or whatever, and I mean, are there really? I mean, some people say it's just a bunch of people. I mean, they're people fleeing, refugees fleeing countries where gangs are threatening to kill their kids and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, is it a caravan of Borg that's coming towards us?
right, that's really good. Yeah, it's a tough question. I guess that's like the ultimate question. And this episode, I think, gave us the best response you could expect of like this more enlightened version of humanity. Because we do have to remember that like these are not sometimes when they make decisions that seem like uncharacteristic of like what we would do in our times, it's to teach us possibly another way of reacting.
Mhm.
So I think that's cool. Yeah, that's all I got to say about. I did write some notes. Did you write any notes?
No, I'm going as usual. I don't write notes. Going straight off the top of my head. Like I said, the acting was excellent. I have to admit, I thought I was especially impressed with what they did with the characters of Guinan and Picard. Those are two characters that are normally infallible, and the episode was gutsy enough to put them in a position where suddenly the audience is questioning whether or not these two infallible characters. Well, are they? Are they actually making the right? Are they speaking wisdom this time? Especially Guinan. Guinan is sort of like this character that is almost omnipotent and just seems to know exactly what's going on, and
Well, and
uh
she does her great Guinan thing in the fencing scene where she teaches Picard like a lesson
and
in
she
a
teaches
way,
that lesson. That fencing scene is
like
great, by the way. Yeah,
yeah,
I
it's a
love
great
that.
scene. Yeah, it's true.
I especially love that scene. She fakes being injured and then
Goes in
uh
for the kill.
goes in for the kill, and you think, okay, here's her, showing up Picard and saying, no, don't forget that they are the enemy. But then Geordi, and I think I've said it before that Geordi is sort of the he's definitely the guy. If you want to humanize the enemy, you do it through Geordi. We've done it. We've seen it before with the Romulans.
Yep.
We'll remember that Geordi made a Romulan friend a couple of seasons ago, and that was a great episode, and it's something that LeVar Burton, it's a credit to his acting because it's not none of it is forced.
Well,
Geordi is just so
and he
naturally
manages,
friendly.
yeah, but he also manages to convince you that he's also really pissed
Yeah, absolutely.
because he like his some of his comments, and again the performance is wonderful. LeVar Burton, uh, if you ever hear this, I hope you're honored. but no, he's pissed. Like, and you could tell, like there's that feels just as real as Geordi's normal nature, which is to be. He is the most friendly character, and I think that like he embodies that spirit of friendship that the Federation is supposed to espouse as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, Geordi. Um, George. What's going on? It's Geordi on the phone there. Geordi in this episode, I think Geordi is the unsung hero of this episode, really. And he kind of fulfills the same role that he does in that Romulan episode. That's the immediate comparison that comes to mind. And then of course Beverly Crusher, also, the episode naturally draws out her natural instincts and, not really caring who the injured party is, just that this is a being who needs help, and she doesn't care who it is. And I think that's one of her great qualities. So this episode really does a great job of highlighting the better qualities of these two characters, of Crusher and Geordi, and they're two characters that don't they're overall they don't get the huge chunk of the attention on this show, and I appreciated that they were the ones. And I think one of the best scenes in the show is the one where the two of them have Hugh
in the lab, the same lab that
in
Data
the same lab
uses.
from right to create Lal, and then later on Locutus is there.
Mhm.
But I think it's right before they get Hugh, and Geordi kind of is angry at Crusher a bit, and
Yeah,
he's kind of being pissy with her, and she's like, well, I know what I have to do, but I don't have to like it,
right.
and
I like
it's a
that's true.
rare moment of disagreement amongst this cast. One of the things that people typically attack Next Generation for is that everybody just gets along so damn well. But here's an episode where we actually see people disagreeing and trying to put their points of view across without calling somebody stupid or whatever.
Right.
They're just okay, fine, we got to do this, but I don't have to like it. But you move on, you go on and you do your job. And I think I know you've many times have said that this is a great Next Generation is a great showcase for what you're supposed to do in the workspace.
It's true. I think that
I think
protocol, it teaches you protocol. It's like a really great way to learn that.
yeah, I think this is another episode where it shows effective workspace protocol. We have the Borg. We don't want the Borg in our space, but damn it, okay, I've said my piece. I'm gonna keep on, and I'm gonna whatever scan his innards or whatever. You know.
um I think that like I would have liked and I don't know if you feel the same way or if you had this thought, but watching it this time around, I was thinking like it would have been neat to have just like a little bit more of Data's perspective in this episode, because I think that like he should have an opinion on it, considering that the Borg are just another variation of, somewhat a life form that's not, your usual carbon based situation. So I don't think I ever got much of a sense, other than of course Data I think assisted Geordi in making the paradoxical shape that's gonna uh confound the Borg.
That's probably the weakest part of the episode, but yeah, okay.
It is kind of. I have to give it though. I have to give it a hats off to its complete originality, because you would that it was going to be like that they were going to put code into its root systems, because that's how we imagine modern computers being like that, right? But their solution is to present the computer with something that's going to overwhelm. I mean, this shape is just going to get the computer to completely focus on it all throughout, all, and it'll fry the system just because it's like an impossible shape to understand. But the computer will think that 3 of 5 saw it and want to know what what is this, like whatever.
Does not compute. It does not compute.
Of course, we don't know the Borg queen at this point, so I have a feeling that she would have stepped in and been like, "You fools, stop analyzing this shape. Oh, Locutus, keep trying, my darling."
You kinky devil. Acting aside, well, yeah, I mean, obviously, as I said, Patrick Stewart is excellent, and Whoopi Goldberg is Guinan. And I like that those two characters were tested in the way that they were. All of that aside, there are things about the episode I highly dislike, and they are that, and some of it has to do with the timing, the original timing of the episode. It doesn't hold up. Those complaints don't hold up as much now. But at the time, the thing that really upset me is that I just, we'd only seen the Borg on 3 occasions. We'd seen them in the original appearance with Q, and then we'd seen the Best of Both Worlds, and which were just phenomenal episodes. And right away, what is Star Trek going to do? Okay, we're gonna make them nice. And I
make one of them nice.
Well, make them nice.
Kill them with kindness. Anyways,
I come from. This is just me. Obviously, this is me. Where I come from, I come from a viewing history where I like my bad guys bad. I watched a lot of Doctor Who. The Daleks are irredeemably evil. The Cybermen are irredeemably evil. I think there is great there's great value in having an irredeemable villain. I like monsters. I say monsters in the Doctor Who sense. Doctor Who had this idea of like the monster of the week or whatever, and it was basically the villain of the week. But I like that idea of something that is just irredeemably evil that you have to fight. I think in American terms, maybe the horror movies are more akin to that, where you have the slasher movies, I guess, the Freddys and the Jasons. Not that I'm a big fan of those movies, but even the the Mummy or Creature or whatever. Although they're not irredeemably evil, but still, just something, a force that you just cannot reason with. It's coming after you. It's coming to get you. I think there's great value in that. And the Borg, when they were first introduced, was something that Star Trek had just never had before. And because, even the Klingons, really, I mean, obviously the Klingons are not monolithic because they're a race and they have culture and all this stuff. But the Borg were presented to me, in my eyes, as like this, finally, a monolithically bad guy, evil race that they're just relentlessly just going to come after you no matter what. In many ways, they're like high-tech zombies. Today we have zombies aplenty, but I think somebody could make a case to trace, the beginnings of this zombie resurgence back to the Borg. Because I think after First Contact is when we had, shortly after, we had 28 Days Later. And then after that, we just started having zombies left and right. But really, I think, the idea of this relentless, undead, basically they're undead in a way, invasion force is just awesome. And I really wasn't ready to have an episode where suddenly we get to know them and hug them and cuddle with them. I just wasn't ready for that. I wanted I wanted more relentless, just the Borg coming after the Enterprise and the Enterprise having to shoot their way out of it. It's not what I wanted. And it wasn't, to give Voyager some credit, when Voyager basically did the same thing with 7 of 9, it was already after First Contact. So we'd already had more time with the Borg. And I think Voyager did the right thing in doing it then, because we'd had, enough time had passed. But I personally don't think I was ready for a kinder, cuddlier Borg at that time, and I still don't think it was the right decision.
I do think, though, that I appreciate you saying before you went on that very informative
my Borg rant.
Your Borg rant, very informative one. I understand how you feel a lot more, which is cool. But before, you did say that this was stronger feeling in the moment, and that now, having had First Contact and realizing that this episode ultimately didn't alter that bad guy, enemy.
It did for a while, but then we went back to the bad guy.
Which, I guess, what you can say, though, what's neat though is that, again, the reason why I say perhaps that this episode, like a good wine, ages better, is because it actually, and again, I don't know that there was any real intention. It would be amazing if the writers were this clever, but this just happens sometimes in a show, where I think 7 of 9 enhances this episode. I think First Contact enhances this episode, because it gives you this idea of the Borg, that even the individuality of Hugh didn't infect the Borg as they had hoped. What they ended up doing was just like a cancer slicing off a section of these Borg and just being like, you're ostracized from the collective. You know what I mean? The actual Borg wasn't even affected by this. You know what I mean?
We didn't know that until First Contact.
But that's what I'm saying, is that's why this episode gets better after everything. It's a little bit better.
The moment, after. It's
I agree.
Sucks.
I agree. Well, I agree where you're coming from. If I didn't have a crush on Hugh, I would feel the same exact way. But unfortunately, my experience was the one you couldn't have had until 7 of 9, because you.
No, it has nothing to do with my feelings. I don't like 7 of 9 at all. Let me say,
whatever.
I hate 7 of 9 as a character.
All right,
but I'm just saying that by the time we get to Voyager, we've had more history with the Borg, so the idea of having a rehabilitated Borg didn't sting as much. But
Yeah. No, I agree. I see what you're saying, 100%. But I'm glad you found some value. I hope it makes it to at least a 5. I'm hoping you give it at least a 5. That would that would be the happiest I would ever be. um, but we haven't gotten to that quite yet.
No, no, we haven't.
Do you have anything from the books, the various books we
Well,
consult?
actually, before we go to the books, Hugh has made it into a few other non-canon media related to Star Trek. I always like to share those, and let me see if I can remember how to. Okay,
Oh,
screen share. There we go. We're gonna do screen share, for ladies and gentlemen.
nice.
All right, so here we go. Share, and
Ooh.
hold on. So this is
Oh.
Cry Havoc, and
And let's slip the dogs of war.
ladies and gentlemen, does that not look like Bane? Do you see that?
Where's hold on. Can you hit the present to everyone button?
Oh, am I not doing that? Uh-oh. Okay, hold
No,
on.
it should be up there on the top, like the green area. Present to everyone, no? Here, oh, I
Hmm.
think I can use my commander skills. Hold on, hold on. All right, now it's on the screen for everyone.
Okay, all right.
Oh, your background's Emma. That's so cool. All right. You mean Bane like Tom Hardy,
Do
who
you,
like that same
do you not see
character?
what I'm seeing? Oh, you don't see what's on
I
my
see a
screen right now?
Tholian. I see
Okay,
a
but
Tholian.
and don't you see Bane right here?
Oh, I don't know enough about Bane from the comics to know that that's
Well,
Bane.
yeah,
But what is it?
Bane from Tom Hardy Bane. That looks like Bane, doesn't it? That's Bane and
Yeah.
Hugh right there. I don't know why
And what
Hugh
is
is
that
hanging out
in
with.
this comic? What is that? What is
In
that?
this comic, apparently the Tholians team up with the Borg somehow.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ooh,
So,
maybe
but
Tholians can't be assimilated.
perhaps,
I mean,
perhaps.
they like exist in these extreme
Yeah.
environments. It's very
But it is.
fascinating.
I just want to go back. I mean, I love the cover. The cover is. Let me get to. That's the cover. That's Hugh right there.
Hmm. It's a little older Hugh.
Yeah. Well, yeah. This is issue 75, so it's later on.
I wonder how far Hugh goes. I wonder if do you think there's a story that's yet to be told in the upcoming Star Trek Old Man Picard series? Like,
Oh my. I don't know about that. I've stopped sharing, by
uh,
the way, right? Yes.
yes, you're
Back
back.
now.
You're
Okay.
back.
Didn't want to hijack the show
Welcome
too
back.
long. But yeah, Hugh appears in that issue, and then apparently he also appears in the William Shatner written Avenger, in which Hugh and Captain Kirk have an adventure together. Apparently, Hugh heals his wounds.
Wow, Hughes resonated. Apparently, the character resonated with more than just this little guy who had a crush back in the 90s, 92,
Apparently, uh,
93. That's interesting.
yeah.
So, yeah. And you're saying William Shatner wrote this book? Like, how did
He
that
wrote.
happen? Was he
He
like,
wrote. Well,
was
Shatner
he at
wrote
home?
several books. He wrote. Yeah, he wrote several. He wrote like the definitive. He
I could
wrote the
see
adventure.
Shatner. I could see William Shatner sitting at home, perhaps with a glass of whiskey or some beverage, and he's just like, "Let me just turn on the TV." And this episode, he's never seen Next Generation at all,
He's never
but this
seen it.
episode, he's there.
This is
Just,
his
why
first
would he? Why
episode.
would he need to
He
see it,
this
right?
is his first episode of Star Trek
And
Next
he's
Generation.
watching, and he goes, "Darling, darling," whoever he's with at the time, like, "Dar-
Antonia.
darling, Antonia, this is insane. Look at what they've done to Star Trek. It's out of control. There's a Borg, and there's a wow, and I just want to write more about it." Like,
I don't know what a Borg is, but I want to write more
I
about
want
it.
to do more about the Borg. Hugh, what a simple name, Hugh. Such
Hugh.
a beautiful name.
I want Hugh to heal my wounds.
I just want to know how that happened. Like, how did like William Shatner discover this episode and
I don't
then
know.
decide to write a book about Hugh? I think that's lovely.
I don't know. It's called Adventure, and you're free to reread it. It's available from
Wow.
Belting Books on in digital format and in print.
Valentine, right?
Valentine.
Very nice. And what? Where else has Hugh reared his ugly, his feo cabeza?
You know what? Other than the other episode, which he's in later on, very few, very little. He's actually he's in a next generation novel called Greater Than the Sum, and I know very little about that, but it is one of the more recent. It involves the Enterprise E, so it is a more recent uh you know more recent Star Trek novel. But I know very little. Oh, and it's part of the which you had mentioned Star Trek Destiny in the last episode. It is part. It is
Gotcha.
part of
Okay.
that. It is part of that trilogy of
Well,
novels. So
it's rumored that the television series with Picard will probably be somehow based on those books or present some themes from those books. So
no,
one never knows.
no.
Um, I really hope it's TNG Part 2.
Do you want Hugh to return in Old Man Picard?
Well, yeah, especially if it's an ongoing series with no end date. If it's like a limited series, I think I'd want to save the episodes for more pressing things. But if it's an ongoing series and there's no, if Pat Stewart's like, do this, then I would think there's room for everyone. Like I think Hugh should make an appearance for sure.
Wow.
Further down the line, maybe in the second season 5. Um, I I think there's like a another thing we talked about him in the previous episode, but and I should really know his name, but the guy who created Rick and Morty has also been running for several years a Twitter apparently, and I learned this about this from Sean also, by the way, from Trek on the Tube.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, but he also had a Twitter where he was doing these like in a humorous way, all these like season 8 of TNG plot ideas. So you might want to go check that out and read them because some of them are some pretty funny. I can't recall one specific one off the top of my head, but there's another Twitter worth following called Riker Googling. I don't know if you've ever encountered
Oh
that one.
God, no.
Riker Googling is like one of my favorite. And then there's Picard management tips. So if you're looking for that like inspirational workplace, kind of tip, you can go to the Picard management tips Twitter and tune into those as well.
That's funny. That's funny.
All right, are we at the ratings? Oh no, you haven't done the books. Is
Let
there
me see.
anything to say?
I don't
Does
know.
Chapman have anything to say about this
I
episode?
don't know. That's a good question.
Joshua.
Oh wow, he jumps from imaginary friend to the inner light. Is the inner light
Oh,
next?
is it?
I
No.
don't know. He jumps right to it.
Let me see.
Extraordinary.
Let's see what that says. TNG season 5 episodes. I don't think
Wow.
the Inner Light is next.
Weird. He
Episode
doesn't seem
called
to write about you.
The Next Phase. Oh, maybe he had a crush on Hugh just like I did. He couldn't find anything to say, or he had a bad week with his mother.
Let me see if there's an appendix where he does go back and cover aliens that he missed in previous issues, which I discovered.
Oh, well, he would just have an opinion on the Borg. Probably not. If we're just doing aliens generically.
That's true. That's true. I don't know. I don't see anything about Hugh. Yeah, no, he goes right from Isabella to the Cetaceans. Yeah. So no comment on Hugh. And well, the only other thing I have here is again Cinema Fantastique, which would do they would analyze a whole season at a glance, and they did some of the best Star Trek analysis of the time. And they actually give it 3 stars, and they say a triumph in giving the so-called enemy a human face. Unfortunately, the Borg don't need a human face.
That's kind
This
of what you
story,
said.
This story would have worked with any villain. Making it the Borg was a mistake, emasculating the single greatest antagonist ever created for Star Trek. It's an astoundingly well written, exceptionally well performed installment with a strong message that was, in effect, ill conceived. That pretty much sums up what I say.
Interesting. One of the Memory Alpha points, sometimes they tell you how the reception was, right? Jerry Taylor, who provided an uncredited polish on the script, commented that this episode meant that we can never treat the Borg the same way again. And do you think she's right?
Exactly. That's the problem. I mean, with First Contact, we kind of went back to just purely evil Borg. But of course, there was the innovation of the Borg Queen. But moving on. I mean, let's face it. We see the Borg only, if I'm not mistaken, one more time, which is the two-parter with Lore, where they team up with Lore, and they're very underwhelming there as well because of the Hugh contamination. So it just seemed like they were such an unstoppable force of nature, and it was just something just lingering, at the edge of space, it waiting to possibly destroy everything that we knew on Star Trek, and it just fell apart with this episode. I mean, suddenly they tried to make the Borg into a teddy bear, and I just remembered at the time hating the episode, and today I appreciate the episode for its thematic content, and I do admire the acting, but I still hate what it did to the Borg.
I think it's worth to go off of just. I know what you're saying. Like I see all the issues that you're having with it, and I think I agree mostly with what you're saying from a rational standpoint. But there is the pull of like this sort of like how you said earlier when we were talking about this, you're really conflicted about this episode because there are such awesome performances, and also like it's very impactful. Like it really gets you. Like Jonathan Del Arco, he says, all I had to go on as an actor was one of the best scripts I'd ever read. It was so, you read the script and it comes to life. I heard the voice in my head. It holds up. So like he was moved by this performance, and you could see why. Like there's an incredible transformation occurring, even if you don't agree with it. You know what I mean? Like for this character. And I think as an actor, that's very exciting. And then Michael Pillar is quoted here as saying, there were some people who really felt that Iborg betrayed the vision of the Borg because it humanized them more than they wanted to see. But I just think every time you can understand your enemy, those stories have a huge impact. And I did think about this during this episode. I thought about how it was in a very kind of like in the same vein, not exactly a parallel, but to Ender's Game, which is one of my favorite books. And that goes way further with that.
It does.
But like the name, the title, Ender's Game comes from the idea of an end game, right? And this episode presents us with an end game scenario, and the Federation chose. I think like they by choosing not to act, the consequences are immense. So I think this episode actually becomes important later on, also because this is the moment when, for better or worse, Picard, like so many billions more die now because they didn't infect the Borg with this debilitating program. So it's a curious episode in many ways, I think.
Right, that's what I was going to say, is that really, Picard makes a decision that and I feel in another episode they would have had the Starfleet involved. I mean, for the purposes of this episode, they didn't. But let's face it, if they had encountered the Borg and had brought a Borg aboard the ship, Starfleet would have like known about it, and they would have said, "Bring this puppy to Earth right now. Let us dissect it. I mean, they were going to do it with fucking Data, a couple of seasons ago. Are you going to tell me they're not going to do it with you?
Yeah, there was a larger drama at play, and one wonders why it wasn't Starfleet looped in, at least not to the viewer, at least not to the reader, viewer, whatever, the the audience. You're right, there's no evidence that they even like
There
reported the
is
incident.
none. There's none at all, and there's no. It's just unimaginable that they would have done it. And to be honest, when you look at First Contact, and they get the orders to patrol the neutral zone, you can almost think, well, they're referencing this episode because Picard fucked it up. We had a chance to go after the Borg, and he didn't push the button. And I think from an outsider point of view, they would have said, well, maybe he's still somehow under Borg control. Maybe, because it just, the decision made to put Hugh back out there like that just doesn't really make sense in the big picture. I think the drama works self-contained, but when you put it back into the big picture, none of it makes sense. I don't think Starfleet would have allowed Picard to have made a decision like that, and I'm not totally convinced Picard would even have made. I don't think we saw the true Picard. I don't think we saw the true Picard in this episode.
Well, I said the full Picard. It's
you
different
said the full Picard, but I'm saying I don't
but...
think we saw the true Picard in this episode. I don't really see him being swayed that much. I mean, it is a very powerful scene when he kind of steps back into Locutus and he's drilling the Borg, and he sees that the Borg is basically ineffective and as a Borg anymore, as a child, I guess. Nonetheless, I don't know. The drama works, but it doesn't. I'm very conflicted with this episode. I don't. It's well acted, but I don't know. I think I admire them trying to go for this, but I don't. For me, it doesn't. Ultimately, it doesn't work. I think the inherent value of having the Borg as a villain, just an irredeemable villain, is something that is too great to pass up, because you really can't do that with Klingons. You can't do that with Cardassians. You can do it with the Borg as they were presented up to now. I think this is a game changer for the Borg. They are no longer just this ominous threat. They're not the boogeymen anymore. Now they've been humanized, and once you humanize one, you can obviously imagine others being humanized, and I think you've lost something. And I think it's and at the end of the day, this is an action adventure show. I mean, you have good guys and you have bad guys, and you just lost the best bad guy you ever had. So
I think
I'm ready for my rating.
What you're saying. Okay, I'm ready to. I think I see what you're saying. I just want to present one last little argument point out. Yes, Star Trek as a show, technically speaking, you're 100% right, is an action adventure show, and it's so much drama and like these no-win scenarios, so to speak. But I won't fault the writers for trying to portray what the lives of these people might actually be like, what the actual Federation that is being depicted might actually be like in genuine. And I think that's the attempt that was made. I unfortunately don't think it was 100% successful either. So it's not going to be a perfect episode, but I do like this episode a lot. Obviously, as always, I attach great sentimental value to it, and yeah, that's it. So I've justified my rating, which is lower than when I started this episode. I am going to give this episode a 7.5. It was originally going to get an 8.5, so you knocked me down a little bit, Doctor. So 7.5 for Borg. But honorable mentions to everyone, because the performances were so good, it was hard to like not give it a 10.
Right. And you know, again, I'm very conflicted, and I just want to explain my rating before I give it, which is, you know, because I do give a lot of thought to these ratings, and I know for a while you wanted to go to just a thumbs up, thumbs down kind of thing, and I said no, because there's too much nuance, and I
You
think
made
this
this
is one of
bet,
those.
now lie in it.
Right, and well, this is why I like the number system, because, you know, it's not just there's a lot of nuance to the ratings, I feel, and I think if I say it's a 5, then it's just an average good episode. So I can't give it a 5 because I really hate parts of this episode. I really hate it.
Wow.
So I have to go under a 5. But, you know, again, the acting is very good in this episode. And it is a well-written episode. I just wish they hadn't used the Borg. So I have to give it a 4.5. It can't reach the 5. It's as close as I can get to a 5, but it's a 4.5 just on principle, because I just don't like what they did to the Borg. I really don't. And there's things that don't make sense. I don't know why. I don't know how you can make a decision. You know, the Borg, every time they've been introduced, it's just of mega importance to everything in the universe. And you have this episode, and it's just kind of self-contained, and they're there for a while. You know, it's not like it happens over. It's not like it's a quick episode. They're there for a couple of days. It looks like.
Well, yeah, the drone,
And
the second drone ship was like 20 hours away when they detected.
Right?
It,
Are you trying to tell me that when Picard is making logs, captain's logs, Starfleet is not like, they what? They've got a Borg. I mean,
who is the person?
Where is Shelby?
Since
Why is Shelby
you said
not
that,
dispatched?
since we talked about this, and we know that there's no robots reading the catalog, right? Like, who's the person at Starfleet that reads the Enterprise, the captain's logs? Like, is it Admiral Nechayev? Does she get a briefing every day? Like, at the end of the day, does she get like an email that says, you're in charge of like 10 ships, and here are all the captain's logs.
And here are the captain's logs. Hey, Picard says that they have a Borg over in Sector 12. Do you know about this?
Can you see her spitting her wine out? She's like, I should have listened to these a week ago. Like, what the fuck is going on? And then she calls and she's like, Picard, why didn't you tell me about the Borg? I put it in my log. I thought you'd listen to them every night, Nechayev.
Where is Hugh now? I let him go. You did what?
If I didn't like you so much, Picard, is it really like that? Is it like that?
Yes, that's exactly how it is. It's exactly how it is.
All right, so I say.
So it's a 4. It's a 4.
You know what? I'm pleased that you got that high. I really thought you were gonna, based on my remembrances of
I was gonna give it a 1.
Reaction. Yeah, I thought it was gonna be in the realm of 1 or 2. So you exceeded my expectations. I'm actually not too, as far as our, relativistically speaking, as far as our feelings go, I feel like we're not too far off here. And I would say that that's nice because it actually averages the episode out to a 5.5 when we combine our two ratings, and that makes it a pretty, that I feel good about that.
All right. You look for gold wherever you want, man.
Depending on, yeah. Hey, if Gary was here, it'd be a much higher average rating because I'm sure Gary would give this episode a 10. 100% sure.
Are you sure?
In fact, I'll ask him.
10?
I'm going to ask him. We're going to find out. I'll report next time I see you. But
this is an episode that should have had more. I really would have liked to have known. I really would like to know what the others think of this. Because, we've been living with this episode for a long time. But I don't know what other people think of this. I really don't.
Well, there's definitely room to find out. I do make little log notes here to try to bring things up on the future episodes. So there are some really big episodes coming up that I feel like group discussions would be quite apt for. So we'll try to line those up, and then maybe return to these, and maybe season 5, at the end of season 5, we'll have our first largest summit.
I'm
Since
really
there've been
looking forward to the
so many guests
season,
on. Yeah.
the season recap
Yeah, it's
for,
gonna be fun, I think,
for
season 5. And
How many more do we have left to go?
not much. This is episode 22, so what is that? 4 more episodes to go in the season.
Holy cow, only 4?
Yeah, aren't there 26 episodes in this season? Let's take a look.
So what's left?
Here, I'll tell you right now.
I mean, the Inner Light is one of them.
Yes. Hold on. Season 5.
There's one called The Next
Season
Phase,
5.
which I don't know what that is.
I don't remember that one either. I'm very curious to watch it. Now I'm all caught up on I'm not ahead anymore.
Oh my god, there's the Next Phase, and then there's the Inner Light.
And then Times Arrow, and that's it.
Holy cow, and Times Arrow.
3 more episodes left.
So there's only 3 episodes left.
Yep.
Wow, I'm shocked. Wow.
We're getting through it.
Wow. We're almost at the end.
Through it. We're almost, oh no. We're closer to the end now than we are to the beginning.
Yeah.
Doctor.
Season 6 and 7 are next, and that's it. So
as far as Star Trek The Next Generation is concerned, Doctor, as far as Star Trek The Next Generation is concerned, you and I have memories longer than the road that stretches on ahead.
Oh,
all right,
wow.
on that note.
Wow.
Live long and prosper. And we'll see you next time.
Wow.